All right, perfect. So, this morning we are going to be designing a database for a book publisher. So, we have three main things that the client would like us to do. They want at the very least, a database of author information, a database of book information, or a table of authors, a table of books, and a table of genres. And we can start there.
Okay. So you said book, author, and was there a third one?
Genre.
Genre.
So the first thing that I usually like to do immediately after creating a table is just immediately kick it off by putting in a primary key.
Okay.
So that way, when you start thinking about relationships of one to one or many to one or many to many, it becomes a lot easier because you can just click and drag the primary key to one of the other tables very easily
Okay.
instead of being like, oh shoot, I need to make the primary key. So I would just create IDs for all of them and set them as PKs.
Should I just call them IDs or should I be more descriptive?
You could say book ID or book author ID as well. I believe most of the time people just say ID, but more descriptiveness does not hurt, especially when it comes to variable names. Okay, so let's start thinking about the relationships between some of these entities. So, is there a direct relationship between books and authors necessarily? It's sort of like
Oh,
an open question.
yeah, I would say so.
I say one book to one author, but could be many books, one author to many books also. Or no, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Can you also have multiple authors writing the same book?
Yes.
So what would that relationship, if we had to characterize it using our many and one system, what would we want to term that?
Many to many.
Yeah.
Many to many. Perfect. Thank you, Tisdale. So what do we need to do in SQL in order to encode a many to many relationship?
Create a junction table.
Yes. Also, I think the formatting is slightly off for some reason. It does not like how you're setting primary keys.
You
Oh, I
need the
think
dash in
yeah.
between the title and the primary key.
Thank you.
The author table just disappeared.
Yeah, where did it go?
It might be behind one of the other ones. Just move them around and see if that's the
All
case. There
right.
it is.
Okay, cool. So now that that technical difficulty is out of the way, so we are going to need to create a table to connect book and author.
Just call it book author.
Now again, the usually when we make those sorts of tables, the general rule is that you're going to combine the names of the tables together. And then book author will, well, let me ask you guys this. In SQL or in a database, is it generally good practice to give every single table a primary key?
Usually, yeah.
Yep. That also goes for tables that are auxiliary, like the ones like book authors that are used in many-to-many relationships. Even though those tables are only really exist to connect other tables, you still want to give them a primary key field. So then we've got the PK. So how can we connect book and author together using that book author table? Can someone maybe like talk us through how that works?
There's going to be a reference to book. Under book author, there's going to be a foreign key to book, and then there's going to be another foreign key to author. So that way they both connect to, you got to make the foreign keys first. Under book
Oh,
author, because you'll have your primary ID, your primary key as book author ID. So that'll be a PK. And then you'll have book ID and you'll have author ID. And those will connect to the corresponding table's primary keys. And that way, if you ever query book author, you'll get every book author primary key that's associated with those.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Daryl, for the implementation. So there is one thing I wanted to mention as well, which is in general, we, and this generally speaking, you never want to make a primary key also a foreign key. So, for example, like what we were doing earlier, um, or which also happens sometimes accidentally. So I've done this many times, but where, for example, I'm going to annotate. So hopefully this works. You were dragging book author ID to book ID. Um, that in general is something that we want to avoid. And the reason for that is because number one, you want your primary key to be unique. And sometimes if you're linking your primary key to some other attribute, that uniqueness can go away. Um, but also, in general, your primary key is supposed to be independent of everything else going on in the table. So, for example, like if I create a new row, I want to of my table, a new data entry. I want to create a brand new independent primary key. It should not be tied, the primary key that I create should not be tied back to some other table. But all right, so that's book author, and author done. Um, what about, let's see, linking author and genre? Can that be accomplished relatively easily, or does it make more sense to link book and genre together?
it makes more sense to link book and genre.
Okay. So, what would the relationship between book and genre look like?
I think that would be a one to many.
Okay, why would it be a one to many?
A genre can have many books. As
What about the other way around?
uh, a book can have many genres.
Possibly, possibly.
Yeah,
Uh, what,
yes.
what do the rest of y'all think?
I think actually it's also a many to many.
Yeah, because you could have like a science fiction slash horror book, something like that, I guess. So a book having multiple genres as well.
Yep. So, in this case, I think everyone's sort of arriving to the conclusion that the relationship between books and genres is also another many-to-many relationship. So we'll basically have to do the exact same thing that we just did with book author and make a new table that has the exact same functionality. So while Daryl is executing that, um, an important thing to note is you can have multiple many-to-many relationships in the same database. But the one important thing that I believe I mentioned on Thursday night is that you do not want the relationships between your databases to be circular. So let's see. We'll wait for Daryl to finish connecting everything, and then I'll ask another question. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So two main questions, and this goes for everyone. We'll start with the first one. Why is making sure that your database is not circularly or connected important?
You mean like if we were to connect genre to authors for some reason?
Yes. Ideas are totally fine too.
Um, I think for one, the tables won't build because I had made a circular reference before, and it wouldn't build because the other table was not built yet. So you can run into problems.
Yeah, that can be one issue. So if you have, say, two tables that both reference each other, and you try to add a new row to one of the tables, you'll get an error that says, "Hey, I can't create a row in this table because this table row is based off of another table, and there's no data for me to pull over in that, or vice versa." So that can be one issue. Any others? Let's think a little bit perhaps about querying.
So can you speak more about the circular reference? Um, I'm not really seeing what you're getting at as far as what can happen if a circular reference is made.
Sure. So I guess actually, Daryl, instead of linking genre ID to author, could you maybe create a new field in author that's called like author genre or something like that? And then we can link that back to genre. So a problem that we might have with this schema as it looks right now is that we can go from, let's say I want to figure out, um, I'm trying to think of a query that we could apply to this. Oh, here's one. So let's say that we wanted to try to figure out all of the genres of all of the books published by an individual author. So the easiest way for us to do that would be to start at the author table and then go from the author table to say, all right, what are all of the books that this author has published? Then we go find every single book. We go say, hey, what are the links between books and genres that the author has written? And then we can pull up all of the genre IDs that that author has applied that are applicable to all of the books that the author has written. And that gives you one answer. The other answer, or I guess hypothetically it may have been better if we did if we flip this, but you could then go from author genre to the genre ID, and you would get a different answer. So both of these are both queries of this nature, going from author to genre, are tackling the same question of, hey, what genres are linked to this author? However, they're both going about it in different ways, like completely different ways. And which isn't a problem in itself, but the problem could be that it gives you a different query answer. Additionally, um, let's say that I wanted to let's say I wanted to add in a brand new author to my database, but this author has never written a book. We might have a problem when we do that because the author in question is now being linked to genres that already exist, which could cause problems for our database. So, in general, if we create a sort of circularly referenced SQL database like this, you can run into two problems. One, which is what Mike was mentioning, uh, can happen when you try to add new data, and the other can happen when you write queries. So, in general, you always would like to avoid circular references of that nature. Does that make sense? Any questions? Oh, and I just realized I completely forgot about the chat. And Megan, yes, star schemas in general are what you want to look for. So to to summarize, a star schema is somewhat it helps you avoid the issue of circular connections because it involves everything sort of relating to a central database. So I'm going to see if I can draw an example of that on this screen.
I was reading a good uh like answer for that is like warehouses because you have like one warehouse and I guess maybe different categories of items in the warehouse or something like that. That's kind of where I was going with it.
Oh yeah, that's actually a pretty good example. So you have your central warehouse sort of database in the middle, and then you have separate databases relating to things for each of the categories. So they're all related. All of the databases are related through that central warehouse database of sorts. But yeah. All right. So I just think, Daryl, thank you for bearing with that little tangent. We can probably take out the author genre part of that now. And yeah. All right. So that is our finished schema. So are there any questions about the schema? And then if not, we're going to play around with queries for a little bit. Alrighty, so I'm gonna pause the recording.
Now then you're gonna need to stop the PG 1, 2, I think.
I've had an issue with my Docker, not being able to get my Docker to come up.
Try do Docker PS and see if it's even running. So I think it is running. Go ahead, do stop or Docker stop PG_DB because I think that's the one it's trying to run on and it's saying it's already there also. So now run.
PG_DB.
Oh yeah, underscore, not slash. There you go. And now just copy and paste the Docker run command in that setup.sh file.
Just this, you're saying?
Yeah. I think it built it already. There we go. Now do the exec. And let's hope I know what I'm talking about.
Can I do it so that I can type the things at the top instead of down in my
Oh, like you were doing when we were kind of pair
Yeah.
programming?
Oh, like executing the commands
Yeah, she
in
wants to
the
do
container?
exactly.
So I can type it up in the file instead of down in my terminal.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, well, before you do that, you're gonna need to expose a port. So let me find the command for that. I'll just copy paste it. Where's the chat? And let's see, what's your -D? Is it just books database? Okay, try that.
Okay, can you help me understand why I don't want to just cut and paste? Why am I doing this and why am I using books-D?
Oh, well, wait, actually, sorry. First, you need to stop running PG database because this is going to um, overwrite that. So the rationale is because you're trying to now connect between your local SQL script that you're running and the Docker container. So ordinarily, what you would do is, sorry, ordinarily what you end up doing is you're running everything inside the Docker container, right? So you're running your commands in the shell, and the SQL commands in the shell, which is automatically inside the container. However, now what you're doing is you're linking your Docker container and the SQL server inside that to something outside of that environment, which is your SQL file that you're going to make. And when you do that, the only way to do that is by exposing a port on the outside, which is where that 5454 comes in.
If I had created this before I did all of that, well, still, if I had done it manually, then it would have been fine. But because I did, I'm not even sure what question to ask. All right. So is this still the right thing to do though with books-D?
Oh, I think it should be bookstat_DB. I apologize. Try that. And yes, now that should be fine. All right, so you've got your confirmation message. So now you should be able to write up your SQL file. And then also for when you want to run your SQL script, then this let's see, I think the database should be books.
This should work. That's how I've
So
been.
that for you to access into the database, which is probably the first thing that we should do. So let's try that and see what happens.
try this.
Or no, the command that you highlighted in the setup, the last one.
Thought I copied it. Just, I don't think anything.
And then you'll have to remove the temp.sql.
You changed the name to books.db, so it's saying PG_DB right there on line 6, where your command. I think that needs to be books._DB, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, good point. It's recording. We've now exec into the container using that docker exec -it function. So that's why you'll notice that you're now changed into being at root at 644 blah blah blah, which is the container ID. So the way that you can tell if your shell is operating inside the container is because it will change from being your normal root directory to being a container specific address. So we can now run Postgres. So what I would like you to try is this command, and that should hopefully work.
Yes.
Awesome. So right now, so what I usually like to do whenever I'm cloning down a database or a Docker file is before I start writing queries on my own, I just like to make sure that the database that I'm going through does not have any weird surprises. All the tables that I expect are there, all the headers are fine, and things like that. So the first thing that we can probably do is examine all of the tables inside of the books database. So what is the command to do that?
Is it something like this? That close?
We can try it and see.
Nope.
So you are right that there is a slash.
Wrong slash.
Or the slash was correct, but the letter might be different. So in general, so /d is to list all the databases.
/t. Tuples. Nobody else knows either.
It's DT.
Database tables. Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Yep. So we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tables. So that's good. And these all have the names of the things that we designed in that schema. So that's a good sign. However, it is entirely possible that somebody significantly changed the contents of those database tables from what we had envisioned. So it might be a good idea to check that.
Just do something like that.
Yep. And then, so usually what I like to do is I'll do like a limit 2 or limit 4. You know, it's like something small so that I'm not overwhelmed by data. And I'm basically just able to focus on the column headers.
It didn't list the headers. Why is that?
That is weird. Oh, I think it's because tuples only is on. So can you do /t one more time? And then try it again.
Yay. Okay.
Yeah, so tuples only will change it so that it's not in a nice table format with the headers, which can be good if you're just trying to output stuff. But in general, I don't recommend it because having the headers makes things a lot easier to understand. So, all right, so we've got author has ID and name. And let's just do the same thing for the other tables as well, just to make sure that, all right, so book only has a title in it. That's good to know.
What were the other columns? Genre?
Yep, I think it was genre. And then we had the 2 join tables. So that would be, or junction tables. We had book authors
Was it plural? Authors?
I think it's plural in this case. Yeah, and then we have book genres. So same thing and another plural. Okay, cool. So I think everything looks roughly like what we expect. I'm not seeing too much corrupted data or anything strange like that. So let's think about some simple queries that we can write. So the first one is, and again, this is just going off of the assignment README, and then we can go and make things a little bit crazier if we want to. Let's say that I have an author. I want to figure out all of the books that this author has written. So based on the relationships that we drew up in the schema that Daryl presented and that we sort of talked through, how might, and also based on what's in the table, how might we be able to do that? So given the name of an author, how can we figure out how to get SQL to return all of the books that they've written?
So we want, the return is going to be books. So we want to, oops, select. So I'm used to, when I look at the schema, I'm used to having also everything that's underneath there, so I know what words to use. Like book.
Oh, okay. I think I get your point. Here, let me copy paste the image of the schema into the golf channel. So that way you might, if you're able to pull that up side by side, that might help.
I'm still trying to get used to my Mac and how to move things around there.
And then also, if you click on the image, you should be able to make it larger.
Okay, there we go. All right.
So, yeah, so given the name of an author, what are all of the books that they've written?
So we want to select name from, and we have to go back all the way to book, I believe, right? And join. Am I doing this right, guys?
So we're trying to find all the titles that were written by one author.
For that join though, it's that looks different
You
Yeah.
for your
said we're getting all of the titles, right? And I put name. Is that right?
Yeah. If we want the way I'm thinking a table should look like, it's like on one column should be name, and then next to that should be the title. So it'd be like this guy wrote this person wrote this person wrote this person wrote this. So I think we would need name and title. So select.
This is why I prefer to do it up here, because now when I want to go up and change that, I can't. I end up just having to put a semicolon in and have it be wrong and start over. Is that what everyone else?
I see why
Oh,
you
well,
like that now.
Yeah, well, we can change it to that if you want to, but then that means that we'll have to exit out of the shell.
I think I already may have solved the problem with that, with what we were having issues with in getting that set up.
Do you guys want to do it that way, or I could do it either way?
Why don't we do that? Yeah, just because if we like mess up on our little queries here as we're writing them, we'll have to keep redoing the queries.
Okay. So.
All right, so put in your temp file just a query, just so we know when we run everything, we'll see the output and that it works. So in your temp.sq, just write a simple query, select author from, or name star from author or something. Yeah. Cool. Go back to your setup.sh. And I think in your terminal, do ps docker.p or docker ps. Okay, so see the runner name for books underscore, or the name for books underscore DB, the name is runner. change on line 6 where it says tac D of your or sorry, setup your setup.sh. Go to setup.sh.
Yeah,
Oh, you're
here.
in there, sorry. Change books to runner.
Change this right here to runner.
Yeah, because I think that's the container name. And that's what we're trying to exec into.
Okay.
Now, I would say just run the whole thing again. Run dot slash setup.sh so we know, but you're going to have to stop the runner image container. So Docker stop. What was it? I think, no, do Docker stop because you got to stop the container first. Runner. Okay, now just run dot slash setup.sh and we'll rebuild and make it all again and see what happens. I think that's got to be a forward slash. If I'm using that right. Is that the forward
You
slash?
keep cutting and pasting.
Yeah.
You don't learn it. Okay.
Okay. So now just, that's probably because the container wasn't built. Do Docker
I think
PS.
also you might need to change
Okay, so now it's,
change the port from 5432 to being 5454:5432, which again goes back to that exposing the port thing that we talked about. And then a colon. Yep.
now the name's changed though. It's not called runner anymore. It's called books_db.
Change
I
it
could
back.
have, well, no, I think it's fine. That's weird.
So this should be runner.
Yeah, go ahead, change it back. We had something mixed up, obviously, from last time. And now just run that file again. No, just run the whole file. Do the whole setup again. We changed something in the setup, so just run the setup again.
Oh, and make sure to do a Docker stop
Oh,
for
yeah.
booksdb first.
Underscore. Now just run the setup again. Probably should put that sleep as a longer sleep, but it's fine. Invalid integer value.
Doesn't it like
Oh, sorry. That's the dash p stuff is supposed to go in the Docker run. That's why. So that is supposed to go after Postgres password.
and then this just goes back to where it was?
Yes.
Does it need the tac p for the port option
Yeah, it does,
in
yes.
Docker p or Docker run?
And then I would, sorry, on line 6, I would change it from 5432. And I think, let's see here. I'm just gonna paste this in the chat. Dash books. And then this is gonna be temp. Here, try if you can like comment out line 6 and paste in what I just copied. I think that should work.
Did I not get all of it? Okay. All right. So now do the setup.
Yeah,
She
let's
still needs
try
the
that.
option, right? Line 4, does she still need the tac p for the port?
Yes. Yep.
The right
Yeah, so
before the
yeah.
port number. There you go.
Okay. Nope. Is that right?
Yes. But after we've now successfully connected the local SQL file to the container, we can now get back to our exercise of writing queries. So, and the main thing that we're trying to figure out right now is given an author whose name is, it doesn't matter, we can figure that out after. But given an author, we want to get a list of all of the book titles that the author has written.
I'm going to use he just for quickness. All right. So we're going to want the name and we're going to want the title. I'm doing what I think here. You guys stop me if.
So I might back up a little bit. What are we? So whenever I see a problem that says I need you to do this query, I always try to break it down in terms of what information am I starting with, what information is required, and then what do I have to do to get between those? So the information that we're given is the author's name. So what table would that be located in?
The author table.
So this would be our starting point. And then what is the information that's desired?
Sorry, I was just dealing with my dog there. We also want the name of the book. So we want the title on the book.
So we need to figure out a way to go from name to title.
So I thought we were always supposed to start with the primary, but we can start with author.
So when we're writing the SQL query, you have to put the thing you want first. So you're correct that we would start off by putting select title from book. But this is sort of like the way I like to do it is think about how I would pseudocode a query. It's not exactly pseudocoding, but sort of like walking through a mental flow. So if anyone else would like to chime in and provide their thoughts or help out, you're more than welcome to. Again, this is a group solve exercise. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
On the line 3, does it not need to have at least for one of them on the table name and then on the attribute because they're two different attributes from two different tables?
Yes, that is correct.
I don't know. Sean had discovered that if there's only one name on the whole thing and there's only one title on the whole thing, then you don't have to connect it to the table. Did I understand you right, Sean?
Yeah, that's how I've been noticing it. I haven't run into any errors. If it's not, what is the word, ambiguous, where there's like a name in another table and there's only one name in the whole schema, then you don't have to put author.name.
I suppose if it's a huge database, maybe you won't know that for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
So do you want me to put the table name or try it without the table name?
So the first thing I would do is before thinking about so are we sourcing the data from author or from book?
Well, it originates with book, doesn't it? Originally.
Right.
So that's why
So
here.
yep.
Okay, so I thought that's what you're telling me I was doing wrong. Okay, so then we want to join from book authors, right? And then,
But to Mike's point, the only thing I can see is that name is currently. Sorry, I got kids in the background. If name is a reserved word, then that would cause us problems.
Oh,
In
and
that effect, then Mike would be right. It would have to be author.name.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is a reserved word, but let me check. So name is not a reserved word in SQL.
No, it just had it as blue, so that's what was keying me into that.
Yeah, but there is a list of all of the SQL reserved keywords that I just pasted into the chat, which may be helpful for those of you who need it. However, um, I do think that name is a column name that you should avoid using just because it can be a protected keyword in a lot of places. But yeah.
So now here, do I have to do book title or can I just still do title? Do you know?
So now we get to the syntax of a join. And again, this is an open question. So how what do you guys collectively think we need to do in order to connect up book authors with book for purposes of getting the information that we desire?
This is what I think we have to do because it's the ID and they're the same. It's the same word. Right? Do you guys agree?
Yeah, that's what I would do. Connect IDs.
Okay. And join.
Before we keep going, I
Okay.
think so you're on the right track with connecting the IDs. However, which of the IDs and book authors do we want to connect? So right now, what this statement is saying is that you are connecting the book author, you're connecting this guy with that guy.
Yeah, that is what I want. Because that, no, book ID here.
Yeah, it should be book ID.
So I think this goes back to what we were talking, Daryl and I were talking about when Daryl was designing the database schema. Do we ever, yes, book ID is correct. Yeah, that's what I was referring to. So you never want to have a relationship between two primary keys. So you don't want to say that book ID equal book authors.id.
It never
However,
worked.
exactly. However, well, it might work at some point, but because there's no relationship existing between them, you don't, that's basically like, it's not meaningful. However, we do have a relationship established already between book ID or book.id and book authors.bookid, which is exhibited by the gray line. And that's what you want to make sure.
Okay.
Anyway, so Kim, please feel free to continue.
Wait a minute. That's not what I wanted to do. See, that's why I'm really, I'd rather do it up here. Join authors. Author. Book. Authors. Dot author ID. Brain just turns to mud when I'm being recorded. Book authors dot author ID equals author dot ID. Okay. And we don't need a group by or anything like that at this point, right?
Nope. So the only thing that would probably be good for us to have is a where clause. So now we would have where the author name equals um here, let me see if I can find it in the README.
As we're building this, is it good to see the output so we know we're heading in the right direction?
You won't get anything complete though, right?
Yeah, you won't see anything until you're done writing the query
Ah,
and run the full query.
okay.
Yeah. So that's sort of where, in my opinion, doing that sort of physical mapping or like virtual mapping from here, how do I get from my input table to the output that I want by like drawing those lines and writing it out really helps, in my opinion. Because it's hard to test the subparts of a query like that. So if you like mentally walk yourself through and you're like, okay, I need to go from author to book. These two are connected using book authors. How can I go from author to book authors? I have to do that. Or how do I go from book to book authors through the book ID? How do I go from book authors to author using the author ID? And then like just talking through it and writing it out like that can really help you form those queries a little bit more easily.
Okay.
And then so Kim, I put the name of the author in the chat if you want to copy paste it on line 7. And then I think we'll be good.
Single quotes.
Yes, single quotes. Thank you. SQL does not like double quotes.
Let's see. Is that what I was supposed to be doing?
Yep. Alrighty. It looks like he's written 3 books, so that syncs up pretty well, and those are the correct 3. So Kim, nice work on getting that query done. So now let's see. So Kim, would you be okay coding while somebody else mentioned ways to modify the query and then you code based on that?
I think so. Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's see who I haven't heard from yet this morning. Um, all right, Gizem, what I would like you to do is work with Kim to modify the query. So now you're not just getting the book titles, but you're also getting the genre of every book that Everett Shildrick has written as well.
Okay. So I would add another join there on line 7.
Here.
Join book genres on dot ID equals book genres dot book ID.
You might have cut out. What was the title of the table you wanted?
The table is the book genres, and we're gonna connect them on book IDs. So book genre dot book ID equals book dot ID. And then another join. This time genre on genre.id equals book genres dot genre ID. Okay, can we try running? What were we bringing all the genres though? So we have to select, change the select now. So we need to add the genre there as well. Yeah.
Type.
Genre dot type.
And type should just work, right? Should we see?
I'm not sure. I think it's genre dot type. Is it not? I don't.
I think what Sean was saying, if type isn't in any other table,
Okay.
Yeah, unless it's a reserved word, it should work.
Okay.
but it is
Why
blue.
why is it blue?
Should we try it both ways? Something else. So is it line 6? Did I spell something wrong? Oh, it's
There is a dot on the end of line 8 It's supposed to be an underscore.
Good catch.
Sniped it.
Hmm. Okay, I have to try this just to see. 'Cause I'm so curious.
Yeah, me too.
Go, Sean. That's weird that you know blue. Okay.
Okay.
So the reason it's blue is probably because sort of like what happened with name, type is also something that you should not name your columns. Um, it's not a protected word in SQL, but it can be a protected word in other languages. Um, so that can cause problems. But yeah, so nice work. Um, the one stylistic note I might suggest is if you move line 8 all the way, or actually no, I think that works. Yeah, I think that works. So disregard. Um, but yeah, good, nice work overall. So now the one thing that you might be thrown off by a little bit, is that originally when we ran this first part without the genres, we only had 3 rows in the table because we had 3 books. But now we have 5 rows. Does that mean that something went wrong in our script?
No, it just means one book has multiple genres.
Bingo, exactly. So don't get thrown off by things like that, like, oh, the number of rows is what I expected. It has to be wrong, especially when you have many-to-many relationships. Um, that is not sometimes the case. All right. So, Gizem, thank you very much for helping out with that. And Kim, thank you for continuing to code. Let's do maybe 1 or 2 more queries, and then we'll wrap up lecture for now. So let's see, who else have I not heard from yet? Let's see. Hamilton, are you around? And would you like to help us write some more queries?
I don't have my laptop right now. It's
Okay, no worries. Um, we will get to you later in that case. Uh, Eunice?
Because we know Eunice needs practice, right? Sarcasm.
Well, it doesn't look like Eunice is there. So let's see. I'm just gonna go down the list. Allison.
Go, Allison.
Is it okay if I pass? I'm still recovering from a dental surgery on Thursday, so I'm trying not
All
to
right,
talk too much.
no worries. Uh, let's see. Danielle, do you want to try?
Sure.
All right, perfect. Now we don't have to keep going. Thank you. All right, so let's try one more query. So can you help us figure out how many authors every single uh genre has from and order them from the most to the least?
Want to rewrite this or start fresh?
I would start fresh. But you can comment.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
How many authors? Every genre, most to least. Okay, so we're gonna select count,
Pardon me?
count. I'm counting genres from
What do you want me to put in there?
I'm thinking out loud.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry. Give me 1 second.
Good.
So I think there's some suggestions coming in the chat. Um,
Okay, I see it now.
When I get stuck trying to think of a SQL problem, I just pick a table and then I just kind of like see what data that gives me. And then from there, figure out what join I need to bring in the appropriate data. And then you can kind of refactor it as you kind of understand the data you're getting.
So in the terminal, can we write select all from genre so I can see what that looks like?
Select what?
Select all from genre. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Megan. Um,
Is that what you wanted, Danielle?
yes, yes. I have to visualize it like piece by piece.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like we need all those joins from the top query though.
I think so.
One unfortunate thing I will mention is with many to many relationships, you'll often, especially if like you have multiple of them, you'll often see a lot of join bys in queries, which make them very long if you do them on one line, which is another reason where writing your queries out in a .SQL file is great, because then you don't end up with an eyesore of join by, select star from, join by, and it becomes a headache.
I think we can modify the previous query though, like copy that query and then change the select statement. And we don't need the where anymore.
Oh, let me do that.
I would suggest probably like copy pasting it over if instead of moving it. Unless you did copy paste it over.
I made a copy of it and moved the copy.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's always a good thing to keep the original, especially when it comes to SQL queries, as once you have one that works, it generally will continue to work for a while.
Okay.
At the bottom, we're gonna group by type.
Do you do genre? Well, you don't need to
Yeah,
type.
I guess we don't have to say genre.type now. And then for
because
the
we're
select, we need to put a count there instead of author name and title.
what did you say? Count.
Count genre ID.
Can we just put a star? So it'll be the same, right? It'll just be the number of rows.
I think so. I got 150 when I ran it.
What did you do different?
I just ran just to count the genre IDs.
What are we what are we counting right now though? Are we counting the authors? That part I'm not sure.
Yeah, how many authors? Oh, so you want the author name, right? And then the count for the author?
Nope. So what I think would be good to output is select maybe the genre and or the genre type, and then count, as Allison says in the chat, the author ID. Because remember, author IDs are unique.
Oh, so you're not wanting author name. Get it. Okay. Do I need to put author ID in here?
Yes. Otherwise, you're counting up every single you're counting up every single row.
Is that it, or we need to make other changes? So this is saying there are 35 biographies, 35 authors.
Suppose order by most to least, I guess.
Yeah, I
And then
think it's
after the group by.
order by, isn't it
Ascending.
ascend? Yeah.
Is that
So you have to specify which column you're going to order by.
Oh, yeah. Order by would be the genre type.
I think you'd probably want to
Count.
order by the count of author ID.
You can put this, you can group by that, you're saying?
I think or
Or just group by author ID?
I don't
Wait,
think you need the group by.
I think you can, did you do an alias there? Like,
Well, yeah,
you
because
see,
this is number of authors, right? Number of authors. Is that what this represents? 35, 38. Is that number of authors or number of how many authors? Yeah, that's the number of authors we want, right?
Yes.
so I think you can just use authors. Yeah. But I
Yeah.
think you have to have it connected for an alias, I think.
It does have to be connected, yeah.
What has to be connected?
So you can't when you're creating a variable name as your alias, kind of like you did with the as authors, that needs to be, you can't have spaces in it. Kind of think of it like you're defining a variable.
Just like this, you mean?
Or no, so like what you were doing before where you're saying as number space of space authors, that would not work.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Would had to have underscores.
Right. And then so now on line 23, if you say order by authors descend, that should be okay. And then on line 16, just make sure the capitalization is the same.
We've got it small on that one, so we'll have it small here too.
And make sure to add the A back on line 23.
But authors.
There we go. So this is also one other thing I would mention, but when you're creating an alias variable, I would make sure the alias variable is as different from an existing table name as possible. Now, for example, we already have the table author. Naming your alias authors can get a little bit confusing. So what I would have probably called it instead would be like authors underscore count or num underscore authors or something like that, just to differentiate it a little bit more. However, that being said, that is a stylistic note, and the query itself looks like it works. That's really about it for lecture. So, I mean, we've overall discussed how to create a schema using two many-to-many relationships, which can get a little bit confusing at times. But remember, as long as you don't make your schemas circular, you can put as many many-to-many relationships as you need to. Then we moved on to writing queries based on these. And again, recall that when we have many-to-many relationships, you'll often end up seeing and using a lot of join statements. And you can use join statements together with your numerical aggregator functions like count. So with that, are there any questions based on this morning's lecture before we take a bit of a break? Let's see, would there be a situation with this database where we use the other types of join? Megan, what do you mean by the other types of join? Like, do you mean like joining by or like a inner joins or things like that?
Well, are these, so if we type in join, that's default inner join, right?
Yes.
So is there going to be a situation where we would use like an outer join or like the other types of join?
There are, um, in general, clients will usually specify if you need to do like a left or a right join, or a full join. Like they will usually mention if and when you need to do that. But most of the time you want to use an inner join because that restricts the amount of data that you're going through.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, if it helps, I can once we wrap up and we take a break, I can pull up some documentation about inner and left and right joins to help explain that some more.
No, that was perfect. I just wasn't sure if we should look into the other ones, but if inner is great, then let's stick with it. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions?